Hey everyone, it's Dr. Tara. For those of you who will be watching the replay, this is Dr. Tara Tuesdays. I want to welcome you all here and thank you all for joining me for this important conversation for parents as we explore ways that we can support our children and their mental health. I want to say hello to everyone who is coming in. I'm waving at you all. And welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm going to jump right into this conversation. For the month of August, we are doing, hey everyone, as you come on. For the month of August, we are doing a special series for parents on ways to support our children in different areas. As they enter back to school, we know that this time of year, at least for me as a parent, brings a lot of relief. I am one of the first people to drop my kids off in the line. I love teachers, and I show my support by having my children to school bright and early. But with all of that being said, one of the reasons why it's been so important for me to have this series as it focuses on supporting the mental health needs of our children is because a lot of times, especially over the past, I would say 5 to 10 years, we have seen a drastic increase in anxiety rates, depression rates, mental health needs among children, especially children of color. And so I think it's always important for us as parents, as much as possible, to get a head start or to get in front of these issues before something should present itself and we find ourselves kind of responding or reacting rather than being proactive. So that is the purpose of tonight's session when we think about, supporting the mental and emotional health needs of our children. I just want to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of it. And as always, you all are the experts. Those of you who are watching, if you're a parent, you are the experts of your child. If something should come up, put it in the comments. I will try my best to respond to each comment, giving resources and options for ways that we can make sure that our children get the help that they need. And so when we think about, mental health in children, one of the things that I want to just start with is just culture. So when we think about that, there are 6 universal emotions that we all have. And I want to jump into that. 6 universal emotions. They are they are joy, shame, fear, sadness, and curiosity. Joy, shame, fear, sadness, and curiosity. And one of the things that we often see as parents, one of the things that we often do as parents, and, this is to no fault of us, it's just we are who we are. A lot of times we have learned how to deal with our child's emotional expression based on our ability to have our emotions met during our own childhood. So I want to break this down. So if I am a parent, and as a child, if I lived in a household where, I didn't really hear people say, oh, I love you, but love was shown. Maybe it was shown because I always had food or I always had shelter. I may struggle with a child who needs or desires closeness to me, right? I may struggle with that. I may feel like, okay, well, I show my love in this way, but we may not express it verbally, or we may not express it through a hug, or we may not express it through, physical touch. If I'm a parent where anger was expressed in a way that was explosive, maybe I had a parent growing up where, they expressed their anger when they got to their boiling point rather than, having conversations as it was slowly building up. I may find myself as a parent not being able to meet the needs of my child, or I may internalize. I may do the same thing. I don't express my anger until it gets to this boiling point. And so when we think about understanding the emotional health of our children, one of the things that I want to understand or start with, hey, Donyata, is breaking down these emotions. So my ability to, and what we call this from a clinical standpoint, is my ability to be with my child as they experience and express these emotions. So I want to break it down. So again, there's 6 universal emotions that we're going to be talking about as we talk about ways to support our child's mental health: joy, anger, fear, shame, sadness, and curiosity. And so when we talk about them, so for me as a parent, when my children are happy, right? I'm not usually the parent that is going to say to them, you know what? Get that smile off your face. If you keep being happy, I'm going to give you something to be happy about. I don't do that, right? We don't usually hear that. So when my children are happy, when they're experiencing joy, I'm allowed to be with them, or I'm able to be with them during that experience. So I'm not trying to distract them. I'm not trying to minimize it. I'm able to allow them to bring that emotion to me. So my children feel safe bringing that emotion to me. But let's say that as a parent, if my child is experiencing sadness, that makes me uncomfortable. And so let me back up a little bit. So children's brains are hardwired to have a connection. And so just like for parents, we are the experts of our children, they are also the experts of us. And so they know if we feel uncomfortable dealing with something. And I want us to think about our own upbringing, right? You know, parenting is just regurgitation, recycling a lot of times of practices that we've experienced or that we've lived through. And so if I struggle with my child being sad, maybe, you know, when my child is sad, I want to distract them. You know, don't be sad. Let's go get something to eat. Let's play with this toy. Let's do something else. Then my child is learning in a way, you know, and again, unintentionally, my child is learning that, okay, my mom can't deal with this emotion. Let me hide it from her. So my child may be less likely to express their sadness around me. Or they may disguise it in another emotion, you know, but if I can experience their joy, they may pretend to be happy. How many of us have people in our lives, or remember when we were growing up, you know, I had to pretend to be happy or everything had to be perfect, you know, understanding that. And we may have passed that down to our children. And so when we do that, what I'm teaching my child is to keep that emotion away from me and to either internalize it or to, you know, express it in another way. And then let's say when they experience anger, for me, their anger makes me angry. So I'm going to either do one of three things. I'm either going to become mean, right? So as a parent, I'm the one who gets to be angry. My anger will trump my child's anger. You're angry and I'm angry too. Oh, I'm the one who gets to be angry, right? I'm taking everything away from you. I'm taking it all away from you. So we're living in a household where they're not able to express themselves because my anger is stronger, it's more powerful than their anger, or they're starting to do behaviors that have to be more extreme in order to get that connection. And so that's me being mean, or I may turn into being weak. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with this emotion. I'm going to give into it. What do you need? What do you want? Right? I want to make sure that we're still friends. I want you to still like me. So I become weak. And then the third thing I may do is I may be gone. So I may check out. You know what? When you're angry, I can't deal with this. When you're sad, I can't deal with this. And so I'm emotionally unavailable for you to bring this emotion to me. So those are three things. I've either begun when it triggers something in me as a parent, I'm either going to become mean, weak, or gone. And then when I'm becoming one of those three things, what I then start to do is I may start to minimize. So I'm going to say, you know what? I don't even know why you're sad, or you're not even that sad, or it wasn't even that bad. So I'm going to take away their emotional experience. I may try to distract, like we talked about earlier. Don't worry about it. Let's focus on this. Let's do this, which sometimes is necessary, but not every time. Or I may try to overpower, right? So overpower means that I'm the one who gets to have the emotion and not my child. Now, how does that impact our children? Well, what it teaches them very early on is I can bring certain emotions to my parent and I cannot bring other emotions to my parent. So when we think about these 6 universal emotions, again, joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, and curiosity, I learn which emotions I can bring to them versus which emotions I can't bring to them. So I want to do just a quick question for you all and just tell me in the comments. You can just do a thumbs up. How many of us have people in our lives that if I'm having a great day, I can definitely call this person. I can share my experience with this person. I can share my joy with this person, right? I have at least one person in my life that I can talk about this, whatever the situation is. Most of us do. And then I want us to think about, okay, well, if I'm having an awful day, how many of us have someone in our lives that I will definitely not call? I'm definitely not going to call this person. I'm definitely not going to bring this person into this experience with me. I see some thumbs up. I see some. So yeah, our children are the same way. And so what it teaches them is I learned, okay, I can't keep this I can keep this emotion away from my parent. But the interesting thing about that is that I still have this need that I have to get met, right? I still have this emotional need. Children's brains are hardwired to have a connection. And so when we think about it, understanding how then do we make this connection with our children, how then are we able to quote unquote be with them, means that when my child is experiencing any emotion, my job is to allow them to go through that cycle. And that requires us to do some work, because we don't like to see our children upset. We don't like to see them unhappy. When we think about shame, a lot of times, and this gets into discipline, which is a whole other Dr. Tara Tuesday's topic, but sometimes I've learned to use shame as a form of discipline. I want you to feel bad. And so when we think about shame, a lot of times shame leads to guilt, which leads to depression. And so understanding that if it's not able to be expressed, a lot of times our children will either go inward. And so I'm going to have to start to process emotions that I'm not used to understanding. My brain can't figure it out. I don't have the cognitive thinking to really process it, or I'm going to start what we start to call externalizing behaviors. And so when we understand that, one of the things that we want to make sure that we're looking at or looking for is, when we're thinking about signs to watch, with children, and this is young children and older children too, children can control three things. I can control when I sleep, I can control when I eat, and I can control, for younger children, especially when I go to the bathroom, not so much for older children, they pretty much have that down pat. And so when we think about looking for signs, one of the things that we want to look for immediately are changes in sleeping and eating patterns, right? Are you starting to sleep more? Are you starting to sleep less? Are you having trouble falling asleep? Are you having trouble staying asleep? One of the things that I want to make sure that I say too, with the emergence of social media, we are in a generation of children that are being parented with peers from all over. And so historically, when we talk about emotions, I pretty much feel how everybody in my neighborhood feels. And so, hey, Kelly. And so when we understand the power of social media, one of the things that it does, the first thing it does is that it literally changes the way that our brain works. And so understanding that. And so that means that for me as a parent, I am competing with social media, right? I'm competing against things that are telling you that you need instant gratification. I'm competing against things that are saying, you know what, you need to have this lifestyle, or you need to maintain this body type, or you need to be eating those things. And so when we're thinking about the impact that it has on children, one of the things that we are seeing, again, and I said this earlier, are higher rates of anxiety, higher rates of depression that we aren't ready for. And so when we're talking about supporting our children's mental health, I have to understand that I'm supporting their emotional and mental health in competition with everything that's saying that they need to have this type of lifestyle at 13, 14, 15 years old, 7, 8 years old, right? And so, like Lola, my daughter, loves to watch her YouTube videos, and I have to quickly tell her, that's their reality. This is your reality, right? It starts to get that competition mode going very, very, very early on. And so when competition happens for children, especially when it's not fair competition, when I'm competing against someone that is somewhere else, what we start to see are higher rates of anxiety, because what I'm looking at is a future me, right? I'm looking at things that I feel should be, my lifestyle should be a certain way. And so that puts me in a future tense, right? That puts me in a future tense thinking, which is anxiety thinking or anxious thinking, those what if thoughts, or what do I need to do in order to have this? Or why don't I have this? And so the interesting thing that starts to happen for a lot of children is that we have this anxiety thinking here in one hand, but on the tail end, we have that depressive thinking, which is past tense thinking. Well, I'm sad that I didn't have it, so I'm never going to get it. And that creates a cycle where our children are not being raised in the present moment, right? So when we're talking about supporting our child's mental health, the first thing that we want to do with that is bring them into the present moment. What is going on right now? Because I can't control what happened prior, and I can't really control what's going to happen in the future, but I need to get you stable right now. And so that is where we get to that being with part. So when you are experiencing or expressing one of these 6 universal emotions, my job is not to distract, overpower, or minimize. I'm going to allow you to express it. And then one of the things that we start to model for our children is teaching them I feel statements. So getting them to express that emotion when a certain situation happens. And the reason for this is that when we start to break down these 6 universal emotions, one of the things that I want to stress is understanding how they show themselves from a cultural lens. And so when I'm talking about culture, I'm talking about gender, I'm talking about race, I'm talking about ethnicity. And so understanding that. So when that happens, one of the things that we understand is that for guys, right, it may be safer for a guy to express anger than it is for a guy to express fear. Now, what happens to that fear? It doesn't go anywhere. I just learn to channel it into my anger, right? Or for women or for girls, it may be anger. I mean, it may be easier or more socially or culturally acceptable for me to be happy all the time than for me to say that I'm sad, or for me to, express curiosity. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing is giving our children a platform to express that wide range of emotions, those 6 universal emotions. And so when we're doing that, or breaking that down, we do check-ins. So how are you feeling when this happens? How do you feel about this? And the interesting thing about this is that I'm not checking in if it's not a good time to talk. So one of the things that we've talked about before on Dr. Tara Tuesdays is this emotional bell curve. And if you all have comments, please feel free to put them in the comments, or questions or suggestions or your own experiences. Please feel free to put them in the comments. But this emotional bell curve, where if you all think about a bell and how our emotions go up this scale, a lot of times as parents, we wait until everybody is here at their tipping point. Now we need to have a conversation, right? Either I'm upset, you're upset, we're both upset, and nothing can happen at this point. Nothing can happen at this point. And so I'm sorry, it keeps dinging because people are sharing the video. So I want the dinging to stop, but I want it to keep going. So I appreciate the shares. And so when we're thinking about, we're having this conversation at this point, well, all bets are off. I can't control what you're going to say. I can't control what I'm going to say. I can't necessarily control my behavior. And so when we do that, we are shutting down any opportunity for communication and reconciliation to happen. So I want us to think about this for ourselves. So if I'm here, right, a lot of times our children are here. And if I'm a parent that overpowers, so I feel a certain way, I feel angry, you feel angry, my anger overpowers your anger, right? I tell you to calm down. I'm just going to escalate the situation. Think about it. So I'm yelling, you're yelling, and someone taps you on the shoulder and says, oh, you know what? Hey, Tara, calm down. What am I going to do? I'm going to go off, right? Because I have escalated to the point, what we call hyper arousal. I'm in that rage. I'm in that panic. And so when we think about that, talking at the wrong time, like you said, Nia, can have just as a detrimental aspect where I'm not supporting your mental health. The only thing that I can do when you're here, and this is especially true, and sometimes as a parent, it's a hard pill to swallow, is one, the biggest thing is to acknowledge that you are safe. When you get here, whatever emotion you're feeling, whether it's anger, whether it's frustration, whether it's resentment, is solely based from fear, right? So I want to back up. So we talked about the 6 universal emotions. I'm going to keep saying them. Shamia, if you're listening, can you write them down for us? Joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, and curiosity. All of these 6 universal emotions come from 2 emotions, which I always talk about, which are love and fear. That's all we have, love and fear. Out of love and fear come every other emotion that we experience. So if I'm here and I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I'm yelling and you're yelling, what I am having is a fear-based response, right? Anger is fear-based. Anger is what we consider to be a secondary emotion, meaning I'm usually anxious, or I'm usually scared, or I'm usually, frightened about something. And so when I get here, the biggest thing, when I'm here or my child is here, the biggest thing that I can do for them in that moment, and for me too, is to remind both of us that we're safe, right? And I want us to think about that. When we go back to safety, the need to defend comes down, right? When I'm reminded that I am safe here, the need to defend comes down. And so when we talk to our children, one of the things that I often tell parents is Nia, and I'm laughing at your comment, fear, not that, but one of the things that I often tell parents is when we're trying to create safe spaces, and we'll get into this as we continue the conversation, but having your child and having your family define and identify what safety in your home looks and feels like. What safety in your home looks and feels like. A lot of times we take it for granted, like, oh, okay, we live here, we live in a nice neighborhood, I'm home, that's safe. No, this is my safe space in my home. When I get up here, and I go to my room or I go to a certain part of the house, you will respect that boundary, and you'll also allow me to work my way back down so that we can reconnect. A lot of times as parents, we have been trained just from parenting to fix, right? You're upset, I'm upset, you're depressed, you're sad, you're anxious, I have to go into fix it mode. And a lot of times we get into decision making before we have even identified what the problem is. And so, I'm going to do this for you. And then after a while, I'm realizing that I haven't even identified the problem. It's a layer, I'm peeling back the layers. And so when we understand that, I may not have to address it now. I can table it. I can remind you that you're safe. And then when we talk about being with, I can acknowledge your emotion. I see that you're upset. I understand that you're upset. I understand that you're sad. When you are ready to talk, I am here because this is a safe space. I am a safe person for you. When we think about emotions, and I want to break this down a little bit more, just from a parenting sense, as parents, our goal is to be the safest place for our child to experience those 6 emotions. I have to be one of the safest people for you to experience those 6 emotions. And if I'm not, then I have to work to support you in identifying someone where you can still express them. Because if not, they're still going to come out, and they're going to come out either in your behavior, either externally, or they're going to start to come out in internalized behaviors as well that you start to exhibit. So that's one. So when we think about that, when you're here, we agree that we are not going to continue the conversation. We are going to table the conversation. And we agree to bring, and I'm waving to everyone, we agree to table that conversation when we're both a little bit less. Because what happens, and I want to go back to Nia's point, is I start to have the conversation when you're here. Well, all I'm doing is really venting or getting out my frustration, and someone's going to shut down. Someone is going to shut down. And again, either when I'm here, when we're both yelling and screaming, or when one of us is here shut down, the conversation is not going to continue. It reminds me of the Charlie Brown video when, the teacher is talking, just want. I'm not even listening to what you're saying. Shami is asking me to repeat the 6 emotions. So the 6 emotions for us: joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, and curiosity. 6 universal emotions that we all have, that as parents, we want to identify how they express themselves or how they present themselves in our child's behavior. And so, because when they present themselves, one of the things also that we sometimes do, and I know I'm guilty of it too, and you can give me a thumbs up for this too. How many of us have ever thought that, my child is doing this just to get attention, right? So you're upset, you're sad, you're walking around moping, you're doing this just to get attention. And so when we say that, what we're also doing is causing that shutdown, right? When someone tells me, okay, the way that you are feeling is being done in order to just get attention, I'm automatically shutting down. So Nia, I'll go back to you: joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, and curiosity. And so when we do that, one of the things that we want to start to recorrect or retrain ourselves to understand is that every single behavior that our children exhibit is done in order to make a connection. And so I want us to understand that. So when we start to break away or start to pull apart their behaviors, I want us, when we talk about supporting their emotional health and their emotional well-being, to look at it from the lens of, instead of, what is it that you want from me, or why are you doing this, to what is it that they need from me, right? What is it that they need from me? And so when we do this, what we're starting to do is I can acknowledge the emotion, even if the behavior has to change. And Nia, that goes to your point, right? I don't want to reward bad behavior, but this is the interesting thing is that if that's the only time that my child can get a connection, because it's not attention, if that's the only time my child can get a connection with me, then I'm reinforcing it. Right? I'm reinforcing that negative behavior or that unhealthy. And I don't want to say bad. I want to say unhealthy because it doesn't serve you. And so part of the conversation then becomes when we're both calm, right? When we're both in our safe space, where we're not too high and we're not too low. Part of our conversation is why do you feel like you have to act that way in order to connect with me? Is that a way that, is there a way that we can connect outside of that? And so when we think about, and everybody watching, and I want us to do this exercise too, when we think about safety in our home, and I want to just start with emotional safety. What does emotional safety feel like for us as an adult? What does emotional safety feel like for us as an adult? And you all can put it in the comments, and I want to play with it as you all write your answers, because I want to break it down on a child's level from 2 to 25 to 30, but what does emotional safety look and feel like for us as an adult? And then once you write that in the comments, I want to take us to where we can support our children in identifying that for themselves as well. So I'll give us about 37 seconds. And the reason why we're doing this is because when we think about supporting our children's emotional health, the biggest way that we support it, just to give you all a framework, the biggest way that we support it is by feeling safe. So Alicia says, I'm feeling loved. And Nia, you said it's so hard to connect when you're so mean. Adults need to be healthy too. Can't exercise it if you're not emotionally healthy. You can't give something that you don't have. And so Nia said, what's the question? What does safety feel like to us as an adult? Emotional safety. What does safety look and feel like? Feeling respect. Thank you, Alicia. So I'll play with these two. So the feeling of love and feeling respect. Those are two very, very subjective things. Angel saying hug, safe space to talk about anything. Shamia, excited to try something new and be curious. So that's what safety feels like for us. What I would have us do to go one step further is then ask our children, what does it feel like for them? And then we start to define it, right? Maurice, calmness. So calmness, respect, love are all subjective, right? Meaning that if I tell you that you don't love me, you can counter that. If I tell you that you're not calm enough, you can counter that. And so like how many times have we as parents been screaming and fussing and we're telling our children to calm down? Tracy talks about acceptance. Acceptance is also subjective. So then as a family, what we then do is we define what those things look like, meaning that for me, and Tracy, I'm going to take your example. I'm going to break down acceptance. What does that mean? That means for me that when I say something, you don't minimize it, or you don't distract, or you don't tell me that I don't have a right to feel the certain way that I feel. Alicia, when you talk about peace of mind, when I define that, peace of mind for me may be music, it may be candles, it may be writing in my journal, it may be talking on the phone. For my child, it may be playing Xbox, right? That may be their peace of mind. That may be when they're able to disconnect from everything that's going on. And so the reason why I do this is because when we allow our children to break it down, then I then know, and I'm going back to Nia's point, I'm allowing them to create boundaries. And a lot of times for us as parents, the creation of boundaries from our children is a hard pill to swallow because we feel like, okay, there are no boundaries. I'm the parent. But again, I'm the safest person for you to experience these 6 emotions with, which also means that I have to be the safest person for you to create boundaries around, right? And I have to show you that your boundaries can be respected. And so when we understand that, I'm able to create boundaries with you. And I'm able to respect your boundaries. And I can understand that we both may value, and I'm going to go back to the peace of mind. We both may value peace of mind, but your peace of mind may look different than my peace of mind. What I'm also allowing you to do in that moment is to create a sense of what we call autonomy, which means that you can have control over yourself. Because as parents, and let's be honest, I would much rather you learn how to create boundaries with me than you be learning at 40 and 50 years old how to create boundaries in other relationships. And so understanding that too, that emotional and physical safety piece is one of our biggest takeaways. Marcelette, I want to go to your point. But when we talk about temper tantrums, interesting thing about temper tantrums. So one, adults have the best temper tantrums. Two, it's really done in order to get a connection made, right? So supporting the emotional health. So when my child is having temper tantrums, whether they're 7, whether they're 14, and the interesting thing, that teenage brain and toddler brain are most similar. When they're having a hard time expressing themselves, that's really what a temper tantrum is. I'm feeling all of these emotions and I don't know how to express them, so they're just going to explode. And so the biggest thing that I can do in this moment, again, and I'm going to go back to that, you are safe. You are safe here. I really want to hear what you're saying. I really want to hear how you are feeling. However, I can't do it when you're this way. And so when you're able to calm down, I want to hear what you have to say, right? And hearing the word no is hard for anybody. And so with that, I want to honor that. It's hard to be told no, but guess what? I want to teach you that you can be told no, and that goes that and yet you can be told no and still maintain your emotional stability. And so part of me modeling that is that when you have a tantrum or when you don't get your way or when you're feeling sad, even if it's hard for me to process, and your sadness in that moment triggers my anger, because that's really what a lot of times temper tantrums do for us as parents. You're upset you didn't get your way, and I'm upset that you're upset that you didn't get your way, right? That's really how it plays out. Like, how dare you be mad? I just gave you this, or I just did this for you. And so in that moment, one of the things that has to take a back seat is my reaction to it, because the reality of it is that you are allowed to feel whatever it is that you want to feel. I never want to take away the emotion, even if I have to correct the behavior. And that's sometimes where we get confused. I want to change both. I don't want you to feel sad, and I definitely don't want you to do this behavior. And so when we think about it, one of the things that we have to understand is that I can quote unquote correct the behavior. I can help you modify the behavior and still allow you to feel sadness, because there's nothing wrong with feeling sadness. You were told no. That's a normal human response to feel sad or to feel upset. And so understanding that I can be with you in that moment, I can tell you, you know what, you're upset. And so Marcelette, thank you for your honesty. When you are upset and you're having a tantrum, and then I'm angry, so I'm yelling at you, that anger for you just turned into full on fear. Right? Because you're bigger, you're louder, you're stronger than I am. And so in that moment, we're both screaming and hollering at each other, and no connection can happen. And so then you feel bad. And so then what does that make me do as a parent? When I feel bad as a parent, I typically go into guilt, right? So now I'm parenting out of guilt, where I'm still not meeting your mental and emotional health needs. I may give in to you, right? So that's where that mean, weak, or gone comes in. I may be mean to you, like you said, or I may give in to you. I can do it both. I'm finished yelling at you, and then I'm giving in to you. So I'm being both mean and weak, or I'm not dealing with you. You know what? Go over there and get yourself together. I'm gone, right? I'm literally saying that to you. Go over there and get yourself together. And I'll be over here. So I'm gone. I'm not able to connect with you. So then what we have are children, and this is regardless of age, because Nia, you said something too that I want to bring back to the table. Where regardless of age, I'm experiencing new emotions. I'm experiencing, especially for teenagers, I'm in that identity phase. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. And so I need someone to help me figure this out. It's too much for me. And so understanding that, the biggest thing that we can do is provide that safe space. And so one of the things that we've had parents do before, families do, because Kizzy, I want to acknowledge that you said it is hard. It is hard, especially when I have my own emotional needs, right? So you mean to tell me I have to manage my 6 universal emotions, my joy, my fear, my anger, my sadness, my shame, my curiosity, and then manage yours too. And then Kelly, thank you for that. When we think about tantrums being a form of manipulation, absolutely. Children learn to manipulate as young as 2 months. How? By smiling, right? If I smile, this person's going to pick me up. If I laugh, this person's going to talk back to me. So manipulation, quote unquote, is not not necessarily a bad thing. Manipulation, when it becomes a part of our parent-child routine, then becomes unhealthy. So when I have learned that tantrums are my only way of connecting with you in order to get you to respond to a want instead of a need, then yes, it becomes unhealthy. When I have learned that tantrums are the only way to get me to connect with you because it allows you to check in with me because you don't see me, then it also becomes unhealthy, but it becomes unhealthy on our part. And so part of our work is our child can survive the manipulation. It's can we? So can I allow you to cry by just saying, I hear you, I want to connect with you, you are safe. Can I do that for 15 minutes? Can I do that for 5 minutes without losing, again, going over here? And then when I feel like I'm going over here, one of the things that I always tell parents, and Alicia and Rosin, I'll come to your comments. One of the things that I always tell parents is I will check out, right? You stay there. I will check out. You know what? I feel, and this is going into the I feel statements. I feel myself becoming angry and I don't want to yell and I don't want to say something that's going to hurt your feelings. I don't want to say something that's going to cause you to feel any further pain. And so I'm going to walk over here, but I'm hoping that we can connect soon, right? I'm hoping that we can come back together. And so when we talk about manipulation, when we talk about tantrums, when we talk about fussing, or when we talk about any of that, I still want us to look at it from the standpoint that it's still done. And I'm always going to say this, it's still done in order for my child to find a way to connect with me and then connect with themselves. And so, Rosin, I want to get to your point. Even though, although a 14-year-old is 4 years away from college, he still just left 5th grade 4 years ago, and they still need a lot of support. Yes. The interesting thing about teenagers is that we tend, and as children get older, so around that 12 to like 17-year-old state, is that as parents, we tend to fall off. And that's just being honest. We tend to fall off. We tend to be there. Everyone's getting ready for back to school. Who usually has the worst first day? Parents do, right? Kindergartners, I'm crying, the child's crying. The child is fine. I want to go in the classroom. By the time they get to high school, I'm just kind of pushing you out the car and telling you, don't be late. But the reality of it is that they still need that same emotional support, right? I still have those 6 universal emotions. I still need that same emotional support. But I am, again, this is where we see that competition. As parents, we have fallen to number 4 out of 4 on the list of how children get their identity. So we've been replaced by social media, culture, society, peers, right? And then it's parents. And so what that means is I have been socialized, or it's been normalized to shun what you're saying, but then also figure out, how do I connect with myself? And then how do I also connect with my peers from a different standpoint that allows me to still be socially acceptable? And so going to Kelly's point, that teenager stage is hard. One of the things that we have to remember, and I literally say this as a mom of a teenager, teenage brain equals toddler brain, right? Teenage brain equals toddler brain. When you're having a tantrum, when you don't understand what you're experiencing, when you want to test boundaries, that's the same thing that you were doing at 2 and 3. You're just not, as cute and fluffy and soft and everything that you were as a toddler. But that emotional need is still there, even if I don't want to show it as a child. And the reason why I say this, and I really want us to play with this for a second. So the number one word of a toddler is no, right? You want to do this? No. You want to do this? No. That's the same favorite phrase of a teenager. You want to go with me here? No. You want to go here with me here? No. I don't want to do that. I want to test boundaries, right? I want to see how much I can get away with. I want to control my environment, right? 2-year-olds, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Teenagers, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Same brain, right? Same physical developmental growth spurt, emotionally developing growth spurt. And so if I'm able to conceptualize this teenager who may be bigger than I am, who may be stronger than I am, as this same toddler who needed me emotionally the same way, then a lot of times I can change my approach. A lot of times with teenagers, where we struggle as parents is that it becomes a power struggle, right? It becomes, and I don't know how many parents I've heard say this, I'm the parent, right? I'm the adult, I'm the this, I'm the that. And when we do that, we take away our power, because in that moment, the child knows, right? I know you're the parent. I know you are the parent. And so what we can do in that moment, when I feel myself trying to assert my authority, or, put my foot down in that way, I've created a power struggle that I don't want to get into. If I have set a boundary, and it's for your protection, and this is one of the needs that teenagers have. So I need protection from what? Danger that is both real and perceived that I may not have any idea about. I need protection from myself. Same thing as toddlers, right? Danger that I don't have any idea about. I need protection from myself. If I have set a boundary and you don't agree with it, then I have to be okay with that, right? And so when we do that, one of the things that we have to understand is that I am making a deposit into what we call your emotional bank. And as parents, I don't get to say when you get to withdraw from that. I don't get to say when you withdraw from that. But I can find some reassurance in the fact that when you go to withdraw from that, when you feel this emotion again, whether it's next week, whether it's next month, whether it's 10 years from now, you will have a situation, or you will have a reminder that I've experienced this emotion before and I've been able to get through it without it being a power struggle. A lot of times when we think about how we learn to communicate emotions, it's based on how they were communicated with us. And so if I grew up in a household where, it's a you do as I do, not as I say, or I'm ruled with the iron fist and you better not talk back and you better not, you're in for a world of trouble, because we're not raising children in the same society that we were raised in. You cannot parent your child in that same way, because you will lose. You'll lose just to social media alone. And so when I'm able to say, one, I understand that you feel this way. I understand that there's a lot of emotions going on, and yet this is still my rule. I'm acknowledging, and again, I'm being with you while you're expressing those 6 emotions, and yet I'm still saying that this is how it is. And so when we do that, what I'm then setting up is the opportunity to reconnect, right? I'm then setting up the opportunity to reconnect, meaning that I am willing to take you being upset with me, because again, I'm the safest place for you to experience these emotions, right? It's me. So that means that I have to be willing for you to be angry with me. And a lot of us struggle with that. We don't want our kids being angry with us. And so with that, what that means is that I can reconnect with you tomorrow, next week. We can, again, with that, what does safety look and feel like? Safety looks like reconnection. Safety looks like saying that, you know what? I need you, you need me, and we're going to work this thing out. And so how do we figure out ways to come back together? Kelly, I can't wait to see how mine are raised either. My grandkids are raised either. And so understanding that we are doing this, again, as deposits in their emotional bank, understanding that, again, I don't get to say when you get to withdraw from it, but I am able to say that when you experience this emotion outside in the world, what I don't want you to have is I feel shame or I feel curious and I've never been in a situation or I've never been in a relationship that has allowed that to develop. And so now I'm 30 years old trying to figure out what that looks like, or what that feels like, or what joy feels like. So many of us struggle with joy, right? We are excited about something, we're happy about something, and then we automatically go into self-sabotage mode. We automatically go into anxious mode. Well, what if it doesn't work out? I start a new job on Monday. What if they don't like me? Or what if they do something else? We want to break that cycle. We want to break that cycle with ourselves. And so understanding that as we model it for ourselves, as we allow ourselves to be with our own 6 universal emotions, I am then better equipped to be with my child as they experience their emotions. So just a recap, because we're coming down on time, but as we recap today's talk about supporting our child's mental and emotional health, the first thing I want to say, my 3 tips is identify safety in your home, right? Identify what safety looks and feels like from an emotional standpoint. A lot of our children feel physically safe, but emotional safety oftentimes gets overlooked or not talked about until we are adults. And for us as parents, that also means checking ourselves when we try to minimize our children from having emotions, right? So meaning that we both can experience an emotion at the same time, and I don't have to win. I don't have to be the one that gets to be upset, or I don't have to be the one that gets to be angry. Like Nia, you said, what bills do you pay? Meaning in that moment, I'm shutting you down, right? I'm the one who gets to be upset, or I'm the one who gets to be angry. Safety for all of us, when we talk about love, when we talk about respect, when we talk about peace of mind, what that really means is that I'm able to be my authentic self. I'm able to bring my full self into this relationship. And again, as parents, we want to be the safest place for our children to do that. We want to be that person for our child. So identifying what safety looks like and feels like in our home. And if I can't, right, if there's an emotion out of the 6 that we named, joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, and curiosity. If there's an emotion, and this is where, parenting makes us check ourselves before we wreck ourselves. If there's an emotion that I struggle with, I have to be okay with helping my child identify someone or something that will serve as a healthy outlet for them. Curiosity, if it makes me nervous every time my child wants to explore, or if it makes me upset every time my child is upset, then that becomes a part of our safety, right? When I get upset, I will call this person. I'll call my therapist. I'll call this person. I'll call whoever is in my life that can hold or be with me in that emotion. And then when I'm feeling less upset, then we'll reconnect. The second thing is for us as parents not to be scared to ask for help ourselves. So the thing about parenting, what it has taught me is that, our children are mirrors to everything that we feel. And a lot of times we learn which emotions we have held beneath the surface through our child's expression of them. Meaning that I never knew that I didn't deal well with anger until my children became angry, right? I never knew that I wanted to distract. I never knew that, when they're angry or when they're sad, I want to say, I'll fix it, versus allowing them to experience this emotion. One of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is understanding that emotions are fluid, and that all emotions are neutral, meaning that they're either going to motivate us or they're going to immobilize us. You can get motivated by anger, right? I'm angry, I'm finally doing something about it. And you can self-sabotage off of joy. I'm feeling happy, I mess up, right? I had a great week, I mess up. And so when we talk about support, and Nina, I'm glad you mentioned it, when we talk about that support piece, I can ask for help in learning how to deal with your emotions, because what we tend to find is that your emotions or your expression of the emotions, the behavior that you do. So Nia, I want to go back to your point where we're both up here. The reality of it is within our relationship, we have found that we communicate when we're both up here. And so when we try to bring it down, we may have trouble connecting, because for the past 6 months, the past 6 years, the past 20 years, we have communicated with each other when we're both screaming and hollering. And so part of our work is, how do I get myself down so that you learn that you can communicate with me at this state versus us both getting up here. And so when we do that, and Marcella, I'm glad that you said that, identifying that safe place. And then the third thing that my third takeaway, and I am biased, but is always going to be that, teaching our children that therapy and that emotions is not a dirty word. And Winter, I want to just encourage you that, again, whatever I withhold from myself, I'm also withholding from my child. And I want to stay with your comment because I think it's so powerful. And then I'll go back into our third point. But if I, as a parent, am the expert of my child, the inverse is also true, meaning that my child is also the expert of me. So if I struggle with asking for help, a lot of times that is communicated, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, to my child. And so I can be more likely to raise a child who also struggles with asking for help. And so part of the greatest gifts that we can give our child is them seeing us get our needs met, right? And so when we think about, asking for help, I don't know how to do this, and I want to learn how to do this with you or for you or to you. And so I'm going to get the help that I need so that we can make our relationship stronger. And so I want to say that, mention that, and then go into our third point the third point. And this goes into that so nicely. Therapy is not a bad word for either of us, whether it's parenting, for me as a parent or as a person first. I'm a person first, parent second, or my child, right? If I notice that, I'm doing this by myself, or even if I'm in a marriage, if I'm carrying that emotional load, and I don't know how to deal with this emotion, and I'll just go there. If I'm a father and I'm raising a son and I don't know how to deal with these 6 universal emotions, how do I support him in feeling that, or experiencing those things in a way that still allows him or whoever, my son or my daughter, to fully express themselves? And so, Nina, going to your point about the backing up in school, teenagers, and I'm going to jump into equity. Teenagers, children of color need parent presence at the school. Now, whether or not we speak in the hallways is a different story, but I still need to know that you are there. I still need to know that you are there because we're more likely to back off. And so, again, the 3 points for tonight, and Marcella, I want to encourage you for that too, asking people for help. We have to village and relationship our way out of this, because the reality of it is, and I'll end on this point, even though the conversation is starting to get really good. The reality of it is this: as parents, our goal is for our child to learn how to make healthy relationships. And the first person that they have a relationship with is themselves. And so with that being said, if I am struggling to meet your needs, to meet one of those 6 universal emotions, then what I am doing is teaching you to keep those needs away from me. But then I'm also making it harder for you to express those emotions in other relationships. And so part of parenting is, one, play up our strengths and acknowledge the areas that we can grow in. And so with that, understanding that I may need help in this area. And like Kizzy, I'm with you, Kizzy. I'd be somewhere too without my village, right? So, and a lot of times too, that village gives us that break so that we can tend to our 6 universal emotions so that we can then meet our child's. But understanding that what I withhold from you, what I withhold from myself, I'm also withholding from you as my child, and what I'm able to give to myself, right? If I'm able to be with me when I'm feeling angry or upset or sad or scared, without negative self-talk, without masking it, without minimizing it, without just, you know what, I'm going to do this instead, this other unhealthy thing, rather than deal with the emotion, I'm teaching my child to do the same thing. And a lot of times those are cycles that we want to break, because in reality, supporting our child's mental health means that I have supported my own emotional well-being. So I just want to leave us with that. Again, identify what safety looks like. Thank you, Nia, for writing it. Don't be scared to ask for help for ourselves first. And then the third, therapy, teach ourselves and our kids that is not a dirty word. But again, start with safety, break it down. Break down and define those subjective terms, what respect looks like, so that we both have clear pictures, so that we both learn to respect boundaries. remembering that teenage brain and that toddler brain, they're in it together. So as always, I want to thank you all for joining me this evening. Thank you, Kizzy, so much. Next week, I am so excited. I hope that you all will tune in with me. I'll have a guest, Mathina James Brightful. She is the co-founder of the Heal a Woman to Heal a Nation conference. I will be speaking there at this year's conference on September the 13th, but we are going to probably do an extension of this, talking about the importance of healing ourselves from the inside out. It is going to be dynamic. I'm going to start advertising for it on Sundays. On Sunday or Saturday, because I'm so excited about it. So please tune in next Tuesday. Thank you all so much. Thank you. I'll see you next week. Peace.